Hi, good day. My name is Melissa Slaymaker, and I'm the Ambassador for Women in Tech South Africa chapter. We are running an Insight series, and every month we hope to put a spotlight or highlight on some
Women in Tech.
Today we are speaking to Leah Kitoloh. Leah is a talent and performance strategist and inspirational speaker. And Leah has had a wonderful journey throughout her career where she just inspires women around the world on various topics. Today we're here to talk about one of her key subject matters, and that is the paradigms of work, or the new paradigms of work. Leah, good afternoon. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much, Melissa. I am doing well, and I'm excited to be with you this afternoon and everybody else that's live with us or on the playback with us.
Thank you so much for joining me. It's exciting, and I always love to learn and to listen to you talk. So excited about today's session. Today is being broadcasted live on our YouTube channel, as well as LinkedIn and our Women in Tech platform. So if anyone wants to ask any questions to Leah, please put them in the comments, and we'll endeavor to answer those questions at the end of the talk. But Leah, before we start on the new paradigms of work, tell me a little bit about your journey, how you got to be an inspirational speaker and why Women in Tech is so close to your heart.
Thanks, Melissa. So my journey as an inspirational speaker really stems from me going through different life experiences and the different things that I've had to go through to actually being an entrepreneur or getting to being an entrepreneur. So at an early age of 17, I left home to just go and explore the world and discover that. And as I started to journey through, I got work, and as I was working, the different experiences as a young person and the challenges that one faces of not being able to pay your own bills. It's not easy to be away from home. Your mother is not there to take care of the needs that she is always there for you, even emotionally. And my dad and my family were so far away. So I then had to start learning to be independent. And at the time, you're just living this journey and you're just exploring as a young person. And this was mine. And I found myself, as I got older and working, I started to ask the question, what would I really like to do with my time? And my partner at the time would ask me, what would you dedicate your life to? And I couldn't put my finger on it. What do I really want to do? All I wanted to do at the time was work. But that question started to then be a constant thought in my mind. And as I got further in my career, I started off in the call center area, and then I moved on to wellness, and then I moved on to insurance, and then I moved on to telecoms, and then I moved on to more health insurance. And then I decided this journey is great within the corporate context, but there was a journey about what I had done as a young woman. And through that journey and not living at home, when I couldn't get to doing the things that I wanted to do, it was the most incredible thing that other women would actually reach out and help me. Women are just nurturing, and they reach out and they're there to support you. And so for me, that started to become something that was of value. I wanted to share the story. I wanted to tell people about the experiences that I had had. And as the world kept changing and moving around, I got to fall in love, especially when I worked in the ICT and telecoms sector. I got very excited about technology. I like anything gadgets. My friends like to call me Gadget Girl because I've got an app or a trick or something that you can use on your mobile or your PC. And so as that started to evolve, I then got into having talks. I was invited to NGOs that would want me to share my story, my journey, how I got to being a young lady, how I got into the career world, how I stepped into entrepreneurship. And I would sometimes have to actually do that also on a live set because they may not be necessarily in the same country. So for me, the transition into technology and the way that we have to use some of it today was something I was already comfortable with. And also understanding some of the challenges that we have in using it or not being able to access it. So I am very passionate about the fact that we have this beautiful world of women in tech that focus on STEM, which is the science, technology, engineering, mathematics sector, that there are people who actually code for us and build these wonderful platforms and make our world so much easier. Because without that, as an entrepreneur, you are actually pretty much stuck without the technology. And I think that's the passion that I have, and actually what got me into speaking, my past experiences, but also the fact that if you want to be a speaker, it is almost impossible not to use the technology that you have as a resource.
No, I definitely agree with you. And for those listeners that have joined our Insight series perhaps for the first time, just with regards to women in tech, we are a non-profit organization with over 15 chapters across the globe, and our aim in mission is to help close the gender gap and help more women and girls embrace technology. So if you want to find out more about women in tech, please reach out to myself or visit our website, which I can share with you in the comments. But Leah, today we are here to talk about your topic of the new paradigms of work. It's very relevant in 2020. Things have changed quite considerably in the last few months. So I'm going to give the floor to you, and I hope you all enjoy this lovely, insightful session with Leah Kitoloh today.
Thank you so much, Melissa. So navigating
Leah,
the new...
I think you are...
Thank you, Melissa. So navigating the new paradigms of work is something that I then came up with in 2016. So my journey into entrepreneurship and really taking an interest started in 2008. And in 2008, I wanted to be a consultant. That was the thing that I wanted to do. Freelance and consult, because I wanted to grow my journey in the learning and performance space. And starting off there in 2009, we experienced a huge recession in our economy in South Africa. And that was something that I had to then step back and think about. Do I want to stay as a consultant? Will I survive? Even though I had a book of at least 5 clients and was doing well. But you could see clients pulling back. You could see them say, you know what? This is not going to be a continuum. We might have to look at how we take on the skills that we're asking consultants to come in and help us with and get them internal in terms of skills and skill developments within our teams. And so I made a decision at that point to go back into the corporate space and had a long-term in instructional design and enjoyed that space because I then got the opportunity to actually working a lot more with technology, media, graphics, the marketing space. And so that excited me. So in 2014, when I left, what I did from then on was always to either freelance or contract into a period of time and space. And I contracted with some renowned organizations and had phenomenal opportunities. In 2016, it was very clear that we were actually going into a space that was changing fast, and we could see that technology was changing the way that we did things, things like augmented reality, robotics, and immediately the world around us started to panic about that. What does this mean for my job? What does this mean for my business? How will we work? So we were kind of like not sure whether we are going into a space where do we use technology to replace resources, or does the technology actually just augment what it is that we need to do, take away some of the mundane things that we're doing, and then use the skills that we have to actually doing the human things that we need to do? And that is when I developed the Navigating Paradigms of Work. And it was to look at how do we start to future-proof our skills, to be proactive rather than reactive in whatever it is that we're doing, either as individuals, as a business, or as an entrepreneur. I had a few clients at the time, and this was exciting, but taking people through that journey needed some sort of structure. And one of the tools that I use and that I've built is a simplistic tool, but is aligned to individuals, organizations for transformation, is what I term as the 4 C's. The 4 C's, starting with celebrate, connect, collaborate, and create, is simple because it's ours. It's not mine. It's a tool that we all use quite simply. And an example of that, and to start with, is celebrating ourselves. So as individuals, how do we show up? And when I started to do this, a lot of the areas that started to be apparent that we need help in to firstly celebrate our capabilities, who we are, and how we do this were women. The women that I journeyed with, the women that I was talking to, and hence then I founded the Women's Worth chapter and connected with some ladies that we'd been having conversations with over the years. We had like-minded ideas. We all wanted to get together and do something. So we started this journey. Some of them were in different countries at the time, but we said, okay, let me start it, and then let's see how this grows in the footprint of Africa and see where that goes. So with that is the whole concept of celebrate is taking the time to understand what it is that you want to do. So we find ourselves in a path. It could be that when I was growing up, for instance, my parents would dictate, you're going to grow up and this is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to choose as a career. You're going to study medicine or you're going to study law. And I had other ideas. I seemed to have a passion in just learning. And so a lot of us would have found ourselves in a career or in a business by default because perhaps we were out of a job or out of necessity to survive. And for me, the concept of, so how do we start to be deliberate about how we build a legacy or have a legacy mindset in terms of the business that you're running or the career that you have? And so there was an alignment requirement of who are you as an individual? How do you show up in your business? How do you show up for others? And how do you show up for your clients, your target audience? And so that's what it was for me. I had to ask myself those questions. The only way that I did that was to understand, why is it that I want to do these things? What am I going to add value to? And why am I wanting to add value? And I realized as a young girl, I was very lucky and appreciative of all the women and everybody else that has supported me through my journey and my career. And so it was, how do I give this back through the Women's Worth chapters? And so these programs and these initiatives started to be firstly an annual conference, and then in between, anybody that was working on projects, we would support the journey of their initiative or their project. So we know that obviously for me to celebrate myself and understand exactly what it is that I want to do, and knowing that it is not just about now or a goal or a short-term 5-year plan, because for me that's short right now. So what do I want to achieve in this lifetime? And it was clear that I wanted to be a purpose-driven leader, someone who was deliberate about the choices that I was making or the value add that I was bringing to society, to our communities, to others. And of course, then in turn, learning something from the others that I was connecting with. And that brings me to the second C, which is connecting with others. With connecting with others, for us to connect with others, it's so important. I like to term this as, what is your social currency, your social net worth? And what I mean by that is, it's so important to establish meaningful relationships. You do not solve or go out there and do things on your own. I, for one, definitely as an entrepreneur, realized that the only way that I could actually achieve the goals that I wanted to achieve, being that I wanted to contribute positively to our current skills development, to our current better narrative of the challenges that we are facing as Africa, to a future where our children actually have the better opportunity because we've tried to make that difference. I realized that I would have to connect with a lot of people. And so it's stepping out of your comfort zone, really. And I would have to then expand outside my own circle of who I know already. So it's not about friends or family. They love you, they're there. It was about me reaching out to like-minded individuals, but also people who had bigger dreams, people who had achieved so much more. And what I did with that was connect globally, anywhere, anyone that was ready to share their insights, be a mentor, and have a contribution towards a woman's worth, whatever way that they could. And so with that, I would then say, create an environment where you're actually having an opportunity and a network of people. So Janine Garner, one of the authors that I love so much, has a book about 12 people, key people that can help you achieve something. And she further drills it down to 4 key people. And those 4 key people are people that can help you promote what you do best because they think alike, they're strategic, and they have the like mindedness that you have. And so for me, it is a critical thing that if you want to achieve something, that your network is actually solid, that it is actually somewhere you can go to when you're not sure if what you're thinking about, if your strategy is not clear, if you're wanting to be a better leader, are you getting out of your comfort zone? We hear so much today trending out there, the idea around imposter syndrome. And I think as women, we tend to have a lot more of that imposter syndrome, like, can I really do this? And there is an imposter syndrome breakdown that was done by Sarah Jane Laurie, and she breaks it down into 5. And she talks about a perfectionist. She talks about the expert. She talks about the superwoman, and then she talks about the great mind, as well as the driver, I believe it is. And so for me, it was immediately evident that the one that really stood out for me was a perfectionist, in that everything that I wanted to do, I wanted to make sure that it was 100%. And it could have been all the way from my upbringing into corporate and the kind of work that I did, that you don't leave room for error. And so I would make sure that my work line would always have this accuracy. Would you put your name there? And then I started to realize, okay, besides networking and connecting and putting my business out there, I need to make sure that the branding element stays consistent, that they're sending a particular message aligned to the purpose that I'm wanting or intending to share out there. And so the other one, the one other that was definitely evident was Superwoman, is trying to get everything done in time. And I'll definitely share with Melissa the infographic that's done on the imposter syndrome that Sarah Jane Laurie put together, because it does really speak to how are you stepping out of your comfort zone to actually achieving the results that you want to. Because if you stay in a comfort zone, it doesn't actually get you anywhere else. You kind of keep hitting the same wall and circuit. And so the navigating paradigms of work started to say, right, so we can get together as women in a Women's Worth chapter. We can celebrate ourselves and say, this is what I've achieved, this is what I'm doing. But we then need to start looking at, so how do we stay connected, but we need to get out of that comfort zone. And so the imposter syndrome says, get out of that comfort zone and believe in what you're doing because you've actually earned it. And another example where we get that imposter syndrome is we could be away on maternity leave. We could be getting a new job. We could be retrenched and trying to reinvent ourselves. And in that moment, that self-doubt, those questions start to come in. And so the power of self-concept starts to say, recognize the work that you've done, but also take the risks because you have the capability and the stretch to actually achieving new things. As a matter of fact, it requires that we fail, because when we fail, we experience something that then says, that didn't work. So this is how I fix it better. And in that networking ability and talking about technology and fixing, it's simple things like when you have a corporate job, you have somebody that has allocated you a desk, somebody who's put a PC together for you, and anything else that you may need to work. If you're lucky enough, perhaps even a cell phone that says, this is how you're going to communicate with us from here on. When you're an entrepreneur, it's a little bit different because all of a sudden you're going, how does this thing work? And what must I set up? I must have data. I must have Wi-Fi. I must have all these things. And these are the simple things that a lot of us were not ready for. I sure wasn't. And I had to learn. And I thought, if I'm learning these things and I'm using my network to learn, I can surely share with others. So these were some of the ideas and the concepts that I would share. And because of my background in learning and performance, I would also share trends and ideas of how do you keep yourself current as an individual so that you're not waiting to be retrenched. You're not waiting for technology to happen. You're not waiting for the unknown. Speaking of the unknown, we're looking at a year where we've all had to deal with the unknown. At least we knew that technology was shifting at a rapid pace. Nobody knew that COVID would do this, or that this is what we would be living like. And we don't know what's going to be coming in the next 12 months. And so, what we need to be doing as individuals and as businesses is planning ahead, but integrating our physical and technology aspects so that we are continuing to upskill ourselves, that we are networking with others, so that we can actually then go into the third C, which is collaborate. So if we're going to collaborate with others, what I've found is the best collaborations that I've had are the ones that were true, meaningful relationships, that I took the time to be present, not just to come and say, so what can I get here, but more, what is it that I can go and learn? And maybe in that process, what can I share? And in that conversation and in connect, a collaboration is birthed. And that's in the entrepreneur world or individual space when you network and grow your networking space. The same in business. For us to work with others, we need to understand who they are, celebrate them, where they're coming from, their culture, their context, their differences, what they know, what they don't know, so that we have a connect that has trust, so that we're not feeling self-doubt when they say, right, we have a meeting tomorrow and you've never heard of the term Zoom, or you've never heard of Teams, or you've never heard of Google Chats, whichever one. You're not sitting there going, I don't know what that is, and I'm not going to be able to figure it out. But because we've connected and we've established a trust, meaningful relationship, we're then able to go, I'm not sure how that works. Or we have a network to say, hey, I've actually got this request. Can you give me a quick guide on how to do this? And see how others are doing it. And in that collaborative practice, we're then able to push each other's buttons because we've also established those partnerships. And for me, that was what I found in a quick story on collaborate and trust and pushing each other's buttons and realizing that you've become a collective genius, which Linda Hill from Harvard Business School talks about, is I was sitting at home one time, and every time my one great friend would come home, she would come with her cheese and she would bring out the wine. And then she'll say, so my friend, have you taken care of your strategy? I'm like, I did my strategy. And she's like, do you want to tell me about it? I'm like, no, I don't want to tell you about it. And she's like, no, tell me about it. We'll have the cheese and the wine later. Let's talk about our strategies. Let me hear you. You can hear mine. And she would do this a couple of times. And there were times she would always pick holes at my strategies. Like, if it's so good and you say you've done it, yet it's not yielding the results that you want, then it can't be that good. Then you need to rethink your strategy, shouldn't you? And at first it was a little bit frustrating. And later it was so much appreciation because I realized because she kept probing, because she would follow up, because she would ask me, I then was comfortable enough to say, yeah, you're right. I think I need to rethink my strategy. I need to rethink how I show up or how I brand my business. And this was a lot that would also happen in the corporate space when we were working together. The more time you spend with your team, the more time you interact with each other, the more clear if you are as a leader to communicate what needs to be executed and then allow them to stretch and understand their strategy or what role they actually play in strategy, not just task, not what it is that I need to achieve in my job performance, but what does the actual strategy mean for me? Then people show up with just more than skill. They also show up with their talent and their ability. And so collaborative practices, I believe, are crucial and based on the fact that you understand yourself, that you allow the room to understand others, that is to celebrate, that you are able to connect and establish those meaningful connections because it lets you stretch and have a broader ability to reaching out to others that may know more or share what they know so that you can collaborate at a speed that is at a trust level and then be able to look at what are the things that we need to consider other than the things that we've actually looked at right now. And the only way to do that is with others, which actually brings me to the fourth C in this journey, which is create, right? If you're collaborating with others, the other trend and buzz that we hear today so often is being innovative. And in one of the sessions over my journey, I had a client go, what is innovation really? What does it mean? Do I innovate? What is it to innovate? I do my job. We release products every 6 months. What must I innovate as an individual? What is expected of me? And I think the simplicity of that, of innovation, is it really means problem solving. How complex can we solve a problem? Truth of the matter is, can't solve a problem on your own. I couldn't solve a problem on my own. So a lot of the times when I'm not sure, and this is where mentors, coaches, collaborators are so crucial, because when I am uncertain and I'm not sure, there is somebody else who has the expertise more than you, and they're able to guide you. So, for instance, many years ago when I built my website, I didn't have the funding for it. And I knew a friend who could build a website, but I couldn't afford them. So, what they did do, because they could code, told me about an app that was out there and said, you know what, try and use this app. It had still had some complexities, not as easy as some of the web builders that we have today. So I still had to understand some of the parameters in the back end. But because my friend was a trusted, meaningful connection, and we had learned to collaborate through the years, gave me a few pointers and tips of where to learn some of the pieces so I could put it together. And so you've got to appreciate that definitely in the world of technology, we have some incredible people doing some incredible things for us. The question is, what are we doing with that technology? How are we using it to advance and make sure that we are being proactive so that we're not waiting tomorrow for the unknown to happen, but we are happening, and that when the unknown comes, we are agile enough to respond to it, to embrace it so that it doesn't create unrest or a discomfort of, but what does this thing mean, and feeling overwhelmed. Let's play with it. Technology is actually lots of fun. And so those are the components that really drew and that I focus on in terms of a woman's worth chapters, but also the work that I do as a talent and performance strategist to helping my clients, whether it's through coaching journeys or instructional design, but also preparing us for the future think, provoking our insights and saying, are we really, truly ready to then move on to next? Have we taken care of the core basics? Because if we have, then we're able to deal with a lot of things and parameters that we're not certain of. And I think that gives a mouthful, Melissa, on navigating the paradigms of work. And so that's how it started. And that's how it actually also aligned into a Woman's Worth chapters and a little bit of what we've been doing over the years.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Leah, for sharing those 4 C strategies. And I think you can use it in your work life, in your personal life, and looking at all sorts of ways of using that insight. In terms of just in general, talking about the world now, if you're looking at graduates, for instance, putting a spotlight on them coming into the workforce now and having been through a very tough year of uncertainty, how would you encourage them to look at the new paradigms of work now coming into the workforce, and how would you almost advise them to get them geared and ready for work?
Great question, Melissa. So, when we've got the theory behind practice, it is great. It's now going out and getting that experience in. And some of us are getting the opportunity, and we're lucky to actually even get placed into work roles. Some of us are struggling and not getting that. If we've got it in the workplace, learn and learn fast. And when you learn fast and learn it. And then after you've unlearned it, try and then keep yourself up speed and in pace. If you haven't got the opportunity, network. Keep networking, meet people, don't be afraid. I think one of the greatest platforms we have today for business networking is LinkedIn. I definitely know that reaching out to people, understanding what they're doing, but it's not just a matter of, hi, Melissa, so, how are you doing? Can you give me something that I need to do? Understand what the person that you're connecting with does. Start engaging with them, having conversations with them, so that they too, in turn, can start taking an interest and learning in what it is that you do know, besides your skills as well as your talents. And all of a sudden, people kind of go, I didn't know you did that. So I have that a lot of the time. People say, you do a lot of things. Melissa earlier today was like, girl, you do a whole lot of things. So it's how do you get people to take chunk pieces of your capabilities and showcasing that. So if you've got the opportunity, stand in. Always put your hand up and show your ability to be willing to learn, and that you're also willing to find a space where you can contribute what it is that you may know over and above your skills. It may be talents that are not listed in your resume that are really needed today in being innovative or creative as a team. And I think those are some of the things that I would encourage, because those are the things that helped me in my journey to saying, be proactive in what you do. Don't stand back. Because the truth of the matter today is whatever jobs we have are likely the jobs that we will not retire in. And that is how fast and rapid things are changing. We are moving into a space of being gig economy. When I started working, we used to have to sign policy documents that says if you have a job, you will not engage in any other work or anything that earns you an income besides the job you had. Today, you actually want to have multiple streams of income. And that's not to say lose your focus on what you're doing. You then need to understand, and that's why the 4 C's on the celebrate yourself, you need to be really clear on what is it that you want to do. So when I use the 4 C's in my journey, they are a reminder of what I need to do every day. So I actually interchangeably use them as my values. What am I celebrating today, negative or positive? But at the same time, they help me stay current to the big picture, because my purpose statement is huge. It's kind of hard to wake up every day and say, I want to change the world. So it's almost like, what will you do every day to remind yourself that you went through this journey of your studies and you're now in this amazing world to actually add value? What is that value that you want to add? How will you add it? And how will you continue to remain current and fast-paced? I shared a story about building a website back then when everybody used to have to code. Now we have these incredible coders that have created apps for us, and we're doing it. But at the same time, it must have been scary when that came out for a lot of people that built websites, because the world was changing. So I would say go in there, embrace connection and networking, embrace what it is that you want to do, go and learn by collaborating with others and sharing and putting up your hand where you can, so that you're learning as much as you can and sharing as much as you can. And that's the advice that I would say I would give from my experience, Melissa.
Thank you very much, Leah. That's awesome advice. And one thing you touched on during your chat just now was around entrepreneurialism, and I think it's important to share with everyone that it's okay to not always be, coming out of university, for instance, to not always get an internship, not always land your dream job, right? And to set yourself up that you potentially might fail, right? And it's okay. But what would you say to people, women, in the community wanting to take that leap onto, create their own businesses and to become an entrepreneur? What advice would you give them?
Ooh, that's a deep breath one. So entrepreneurship is one of those rose-looking things, right? We love the sound of it. And when we see people who are succeeding, it sounds really great. And so, like I said, my entrepreneur journey started in 2008. At the same time, doesn't mean that we need to wait decades before we can actually achieve it. It just means that we need to be a lot more strategic in our planning. So we hear businesses have strategy. We hear a lot of what is the journey, the goals, and what are my resolutions. But what we don't do very often is we don't have personal strategies. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, start there, is my advice. Be very clear on what it is that you want as an individual and have a strategy towards that, and how you will track the milestones of how you will get there. So if you have a job, obviously it's not wise to just get out and say, I'm going to be an entrepreneur tomorrow. Is what will you do to transition? So if you are in the corporate world and that mindset is what you are familiar with, it's when you start a project and it's rolling out, it's not let's just roll it out today. You transition through that process. And entrepreneurship is like that. We may have the natural talents to be an entrepreneur, but we still have to think about it. We still have to plan it through and go, what will I do? If your natural talent is to wake up today and go, I know I'm going to make a lot of money today and I'm going to sell tomatoes, that's great. What happens when you can't sell the tomatoes tomorrow? Or the whole street opens tomatoes and they're selling them? What will your unique differentiator be? Why will people be interested in what it is that you are offering? So are you going to be an entrepreneur because you like it? Or are you actually reaching out to the world and saying, I think I have something for you. So what are you solving for? And when you can understand what that is, and then you're linking it to your personal strategy, you can then see how you actually start to package that and how your journey is going to look like. So obviously, you're going to take care of the goals, the tasks, the objectives, and then measure them timelessly to say, right, I am reaching the objectives that I want to as an entrepreneur. And that's where we get different people that are either serial entrepreneurs because they have different business sets. Once they're done with that piece, they want to give it over because they love the thrill of starting up, right? But there are also those of us that actually like to kind of go, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm in this space and I love it. So for me, I totally found an area where I totally love what I do. I love to learn. I love to explore. I love to break things. And so if you're going to be an entrepreneur, ask yourself, would you go to sleep content that you had spent 20 hours working on something and you could barely keep your eyes open, but to get it done? And you are completely content with it and that you could live that life continuum. And so, yeah, I think being an entrepreneur is start with a personal strategy. And even though you are in that speed and already doing it, take a look at it, match it back to your personal strategy and say, that's interesting. Let me go and take a look. What is it that I've actually wanted to do and have I actually achieved it? You could find a few gaps that you actually want to look into and say, maybe I've missed this. Now I can go back and fix it, even though I'm steps ahead. So that's perhaps where I would actually share my journey, Melissa, in terms of what I've had to consider in the entrepreneur space.
Thank you so much. Leah, we've got some interesting questions coming through for the live feed. Do you want to answer a couple of those? Are you ready?
Yes.
So the first one is, what impact do you think, considering the historical lack of underrepresentation of women in the workplace? So the question is, what impacts do you think, considering those, underrepresentation, how women would navigate the tech world? So, so the question is, what impact do you think historical lack of underrepresentation of women on the workplace impacts how women would navigate the world? So I guess that question is basically considering the lack of underrepresentation of women in the technology world, what do you think is the impact potentially? I hope I interpreted that question.
Let's see if we get the question understood and if I can respond to it, and then we'll check in and see if we've actually hit it. So my background comes strongly from your learning and performance space. Interesting to say that having started from there, HR L&D did not have a seat at the table many years ago. We actually had, and in some areas, still a struggle. We had to fight for that voice, and it took years and years and years to get there. And so we have the same issue in the tech world, is we sit in a space where you're now looking for a seat at the table. So how do you get the seat at the table? Is to show the value through the delivery or the models that can be done. And I think that in women in technology is fascinating. I mean, I definitely am not in STEM, but I use technology a lot. And what I've done to showcase that I'm able to handle myself around technology is I've worked with programming of learning solutions, learning platforms, advising clients on that speed. I use that in my entrepreneurship, moved very swiftly along into transitioning online. Why? Because I took the time to doing that. Now, if you are in technology, the question is, it's not just a matter of the client or business knows that it's there and can be done. So what are we doing differently to make a voice about it and wanting to do something about it? Now, at one point in my career, what happened was I was working with a lot of media, needing to take video footage and maybe even create graphics and media through technology. And that wasn't an option in learning and performance, but I had to keep on motivating, putting a business case together, understanding what that was, and eventually getting my voice heard. So I think it's winning the voice at the table by showcasing, either by doing a pilot project, pushing the results in terms of what we are capable of doing contributing and putting up our hands to collaborate when the opportunities are there. And I think that is a space that will continue winning. And I hope that that answers that question, Melissa. Maybe we can check in and see if that was the question that was being asked and if I've addressed that for them. Thank you for that question.
So I've responded to say, so yes, so it meant that women was as a whole not represented or well represented in the workplace or workforce as a whole. Do women now have enough representation? I think I can answer that, and for this person, and I think this is exactly what Women in Tech is about, and there's still a gender gap. I mean, even Eurostat produced results recently to say that there's only 36% of developers entering the workforce that are women, so there's the gap. And then obviously, if you look at the leadership roles as you move up into the business, the gap increases significantly. I mean, the top 5 or in the Forbes 500, only 5% of CEOs globally are women that are representing, only 5% of the top, Forbes 500 CEOs. So it just shows that there's this massive gap and it's increasing and it's not getting better. So women are still not being represented. And this is the reason why we as Women in Tech put in, actions and objectives to really change that through programs, through partnerships. We do all these webinars and insights, and we do master role model master classes and all sorts of wonderful programs to action the change, not just to talk about it. So the answer is really from Women in Tech perspective. I think there is definitely still a gender gap, and it's getting worse. It's not getting better. This is why it's important to have these forums and to have this platform to talk about it and to come up with solutions. So hopefully that answered their question. The other one, I would say, another question we had was, if someone's not currently in technology or has a technical background, how do they pivot to get into the industry? I know you're yourself not very technical, but I'm sure with your performance strategy, how would someone change industry sector? Can you help that one?
So definitely, again, I mean, technology, to getting into that space, it's broad. So you've got to then be clear in terms of what do you want to get into? What would you like to do? And then understanding the journey. So, I mean, I think with technology, it gets quite technical. So you're either going to have to take up a class for it, or you're going to have to take up studies that actually help you get into that space. If you're naturally talented, then you're going to have to bridge that by certification or qualification that's required thereof. But then also stepping into the opportunity of networking into that space. And I think Melissa just alluded to, join the webinars, get into the programs that Women in Tech are sharing and are giving, so that you can actually get yourself into the same like-minded individual and work with that. In my space, it's quite interesting because a lot of what we do is self-taught. And that's how lovely and amazing technology is. It's fun. It's actually fun. And I see my daughter recently in school, they're coding. And I'm like, you're doing what? We didn't do that. And she's like, oh, okay. And she can get onto any piece of technology and work it without thinking about it twice, where we tend to be a little more fearful. So embrace it and search the learning aspect. And I think it's identifying, like I said, what is it specifically in technology that you would like to become involved in? And I believe that Women in Tech is exactly that right platform that would help take you through that journey as well.
Thank you, Leah. And I've got another question. Let me just double check. Oh, no. So I think it's important just to mention that when women look at technology, it's not always meaning that you're going to code. It doesn't mean you're going to sit all day just, writing Java, Python, whatever. It actually, there's so many jobs in IT that doesn't require you to physically code, but to have an understanding of the technology, whether it's a specific software platform, whether it's social media, whether it's website design or business analysis or product design. So there's so many aspects to technology that doesn't actually require you to physically code all day. and there's some fun jobs. Really, I speak to a lot of people every day that do some awesome like user experience work, and program managers that work at a very strategic level, but still with technology. So I think it's important to highlight that to maybe the younger people coming in, to say, look, IT is not always just about being a developer, although we need more developers, but there's so many jobs in your career that you can progress into, so you don't have to always just do that if you don't want to. But if you do, that's also great. Leah, I think in terms of the new paradigms of work, is there anything else that you wanted to share with us? Any more insights that you want us to take away with us today?
I think the paradigms of work, really what it helps people do, like I said, individuals, organizations, and teams do, is when it's aligned, it's obviously either custom to the requirement of what clients are looking for in terms of, we need some alignment in our thinking. How could we better perform as a team? How could I better perform as an individual? Or how do I actually get my business going? What kind of strategies do I need to have in place? I think the thought that I would love to leave everybody with around why the new paradigms of work, we should be thinking in that aspect, is let's not wait to be disrupted. Let's continue to disrupt ourselves, because the unknown is always going to be coming. And so the more we know, the better we are and comfortable in the space that we should be working in. So one of the things that is, I think for me, a definite going ahead is we're always going to be in a space of technology, whether we like it or not. I think from childhood, I remember we didn't even have PCs or cell phones when I was a little girl. But I remember my uncle talking about, we're going to have augmented reality. And I was like, what? And I called him a few years back and I said, we have augmented reality. Do you know that? And he's like, oh, and I said, you told me about it. He couldn't remember. So what we have today, think about it like the first Pentium 1 PC you ever had is the next 10 years, or even closer, the next 5 years, because it's just going to keep advancing. And the best thing that I can say to everyone is, and that I'm saying to myself, is keep reinventing, keep looking for new opportunities, keep trying to find ways to be innovative and collaborate with others, and connect with others. So I think that's really what I would say is some of the takeaways that I would leave everybody else with around the navigating new paradigms of work.
Thank you so much, Leah. If I can ask just one more question, I'm going one which I think is very relevant. It's coming back to your inspirational and motivational speaking. Someone said if someone wants to become an entrepreneur, but they're too scared to take that first step, what would you say to someone like that?
Fear is a good place. Embrace it. So the fear zone, our perspective, we're not sure why we want to go into it. I would recommend a couple of things. If you can do it yourself, start asking yourself the questions of, so what is it that you really want to do? How will you do it? And that personal strategy map helps you do that a lot. I would also recommend investing in yourself and looking at a coach that helps you transition into that journey, who helps you say, these are the stretch goals that you want to achieve to getting a business going, and that you're wanting to put together different things. So they help you structure that, and you're clear on the things that you want to do. So I think that is where I'd probably start off with a personal strategy. And if you can, get yourself a personal strategy coach.
Thank you so much, Leah. I think that's awesome advice. We've got some fantastic comments coming through, all being, saying it's great discussions, very inspirational discussions, from all over the world. So thank you so much for joining us today. And for anyone else wanting to reach out to Leah or myself, please connect with us on LinkedIn, and we'll be happy to answer questions further on. But for today's live session, I'm Melissa and Leah. Thank you so much again. Have a good afternoon, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Melissa, and thank you to everybody else that's dialed in with us. Appreciate the time.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.